Leader Theresa May has told the House of Commons that she will postpone the vote on her Brexit deal. Amid laughter and jeers, the embattled Prime Minister admitted she wouldn't get the votes and it would have been easily rejected.
I've listened very carefully to what has been said in this chamber and out of it. To what has been said in this chamber and out of it by members from all sides. From listening to those views, it is clear that while there is broad support for many of the key aspects of the deal, on one issue, the Northern Ireland backstop, there remains widespread and deep concern. As a result, if we went ahead and held the vote tomorrow, the deal would be rejected by a significant margin. We will therefore defer the vote scheduled for tomorrow and not proceed to divide the House at this time.
And at the heart of this, as you heard there, the Prime Minister mentioning the backstop, the mechanism that would kick in to prevent a hard border being established between Northern Ireland and Ireland after 2020 if a broader deal between the EU and the UK hasn't been arranged. What next now? Bianca Nabilo is at Downing Street. Erin McLaughlin is in Brussels for us. Bianca, what now?
Well, the Prime Minister was speaking to Parliament as much as she was speaking to the nation in that address that we just heard, and she's clearly trying to present this now as more of a binary choice, not what kind of Brexit do you favour. Do you favour a hard Brexit? Do you favour a softer Norway-style Brexit? But basically, do you want to deliver on the result of the referendum or not? And she faced a raucous House of Commons, as you would expect. Let's just take a listen to get a sense of what the atmosphere was like on that very point.
Does this House want to deliver Brexit?
Now, that response, Julia, shows still how divided the House of Commons is on the very issue itself. In terms of what happens next, there's been lots of confusion about that today. I've been speaking to MPs and retired MPs who have had long parliamentary careers about exactly how the Prime Minister can proceed. Does she need the approval of the House of Commons to delay this vote? Because, Julia, in quite an interesting, almost last act sort of twist of the political theatre in the House of Commons today, the Speaker intervened and said that he thought delaying the vote at this later stage was deeply discourteous, particularly to the 164 MPs who'd already spoken in the debate, and he didn't think it was proper form. So he'd like to see a debate on whether or not Parliament will allow this debate and this vote to be rescheduled. However, I understand from the House of Commons that that isn't essential. The government could actually delay this vote by themselves, though of course that would meet with tough resistance from Parliament that wants to be as involved in this as possible.
Yeah, there's only so much debating that we can do here. I mean, we simply don't know. And this was one of the questions that was posed to her numerous times. When indeed will a vote come if we delay this vote and don't hold it tomorrow as she's planning at this stage? She's talked about going and having emergency talks now with the EU to see what she can come up with to change things around this backstop. Is she more at risk of her own party here losing faith in her than perhaps Jeremy Corbyn stepping up here and saying, look, we need a confidence vote and we need a change of government?
She's playing an incredibly dangerous game by delaying this. MPs that I've spoken to today from the Conservative Party, none of them are happy about this delay. Some feel like it's just postponing the inevitable, and it's better to get that definitive no from Parliament, to give her a mandate to go back to the EU and say, look, this can't pass, it can't be accepted by Parliament, so you need to give me some kind of concession over the backstop. Other MPs I've spoken to hold out hope that she might be able to pull a rabbit out of a hat somehow, but generally the consensus is one of extreme frustration. An MP that is a Remain supporting MP that has made a decision to take a stand and support the government on this actually told me today he felt eyeball-rolling irritation that they've decided to delay this vote and was really angry about it. So she does need to be very wary of the mood within her own party, and there's of course more rumours swirling now about whether or not this will be the moment to precipitate the 48 letters going into the 22 committee which which would cause a leadership contest as a result of a vote of no confidence.
Yeah, it's so tough, isn't it? Erin, come in here too, because the Prime Minister now going to have emergency talks with EU leaders. The Commission have been very firm here and said, look, this is as good as it gets for this deal. What can they give her here to try and help her get this withdrawal agreement passed in Parliament? What can they do? What are they willing to do?
Well, we have yet to hear official reaction, Julia, from EU leaders on this topic, referencing her before Parliament there delaying this vote, going back to the member states, back to the Council, back to the Commission to seek what she calls further reassurances that that very controversial Northern Ireland backstop will not be will not be indefinite. Reassurances, she says, that both sides of the aisle there in Westminster are demanding. She said she had conversations over the weekend. We know she talked to German Chancellor Angela Merkel. We know she talked to Mark Rutte of the Netherlands, as well as Leo Varadkar in Dublin. We heard from Prime Minister Varadkar earlier today, and essentially he said that reopening the negotiation at this point on any aspect of that withdrawal agreement would mean that the entire agreement renegotiation would need to be reopened. And it's something that Prime Minister May, in fact, alluded to there in Parliament. She said that by opening that renegotiation, it could also introduce the possibility that that Northern Ireland only backstop solution could be put back on the table there, sort of shot there to the Democratic Unionist Party, so to speak. I was exchanging text messages with one EU diplomat asking him if he knew what she meant by reassurances. He said he has no idea, but he's very clear that at this point the main architecture of that withdrawal agreement cannot be changed. And without that, it's very unclear where Prime Minister May goes from here in order to make this palatable there in Parliament.
Yeah, what a mess. Bianca, Erin, thank you so much for that. Right, joining us now for some more insight into Prime Minister May's decision here, Joey Jones, former spokesperson for the Prime Minister. Wow, what do you make of today's events?
Well, Theresa May clearly feels that she's been boxed into a corner here and has had to react. To be honest, the parliamentary statement that is still ongoing, compared with the really bumpy ride that I thought that she might get, has been smoother sailing than she could have anticipated. But nevertheless, today, setting aside the substance of what she's trying to achieve, presentationally over the weekend has been total shambles, an absolute disaster. I mean, at 11 o'clock, the Prime Minister's official spokesman went into a briefing with journalists. I've been on both sides of that sort of an organisation, and I know that if you do something where you put the spokesman out, who then looks like a complete plonker, basically half an hour later, where it becomes clear that they didn't know what they were talking about, you hemorrhage support not just within Downing Street from officials, but right across government, because everybody can see that you don't know what you're doing. And that's a real problem from the Prime Minister's point of view when she needs people to row in support of her.
I mean, there are those that could look at this situation and say, that wasn't a problem in the last 24 hours. That's been a problem for weeks and months. Mixed messaging, confusion, simply not looking like they have a handle on the situation. And opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn kind of said that in Parliament today.
Yes.
What now? Do you think this was the best way for her to remain the Prime Minister of the country and at least go back to Europe and say, look, we need to negotiate here because I've prevented suffering a humiliating defeat in Parliament, but I was going to suffer a humiliating defeat, and this deal is not going to fly?
Yes, well, I guess she was, in terms of the way in which they clearly were looking at it within Downing Street, they felt between the devil and the deep blue sea. So on the one hand, they could have the vote, they could be beaten into oblivion in the House of Commons and then try to go back. They've decided instead to go back to Brussels and then have the vote down the track. I have to say, all of that is posited on the premise behind it is that a bit of tweaking here, you know, a few more dotted I's over there and a bit of language inserted into the future framework, and it all becomes rosy again. I think they're deluding themselves.
Right. Define tweaking here, because we're bringing it back to the conversation conversation we were just having in the backstop arrangement.
Well, I don't think the tweaking will work. I mean, the tweaking that they could do is, in some way, they've been already talking to parliamentarians about allowing parliamentarians, as you have a high opinion of their own importance, and there is a presumption that MPs will feel that maybe if there's a mechanism inserted into this whereby MPs play a role when the UK, or if the UK goes into the backstop arrangements, and indeed to bring the UK then out of them, then it would be, ergo, a better arrangement. But it's cosmetic at best, and I don't think many people will be fooled.